I now give the floor to Ms. Edem Wosornu.
In North Darfur, 8 months after the Security Council adopted Resolution 2736, civilians remain under attack. Violence in and around the Zamzam displacement camp, estimated to be hosting hundreds of thousands of civilians, and where famine conditions have been confirmed, has further intensified. Satellite imagery confirms the use of heavy weaponry in and around Zamzam in recent weeks, and the destruction of the main market facilities within the camp. Terrified civilians, including humanitarian workers, were unable to leave the area when the fighting was most intense. Many were killed, including at least 2 humanitarian workers. On Monday, Médecins Sans Frontières, the main provider of health and nutrition services in Zamzam, announced that it has been forced to halt its operations in the camp due to the deteriorating security situation. The United Nations World Food Programme has also just confirmed suspension of voucher-based food assistance in the camp due to insecurity and the destruction of the market. In the south of the country, we are receiving reports of fighting spreading into new areas in North Kordofan and South Kordofan, posing yet more risks for civilians and further complicating movements of humanitarian personnel and supplies.
Nearly 2 years since the start of this war, and once again, I cannot fail to be struck by the reports of death and destruction. More violence, more families ripped apart, more children starving. Last month, my Foreign Secretary visited Ardre and heard firsthand about the suffering faced by women, the suffering of sexual violence, of rape, of hunger, who had fled the conflict. It does not need to be this way. The parties to the conflict can take actions now to end the suffering. We urge the parties to end their military ambitions and focus on creating the conditions for peace, including through full cooperation with UN and African Union mediation efforts.
We cannot let Sudan again become a permissive environment for terrorist and transnational criminal organizations. This would further undermine our shared interests and security in the Red Sea region. Massive refugee flows in the region are putting intense pressure on the economies and internal security of those countries hosting refugees. The United States continues to call on Sudan's warring parties to cease hostilities, allow unhindered humanitarian access, and protect civilians. We have made clear to both sides our interest is the restoration of peace and an end to the conflict. Both belligerents have committed atrocities, and the perpetrators must be held accountable. All warring parties must protect civilians and allow unhindered humanitarian access. We are gravely concerned with the RSF's ongoing attacks on the Zamzam IDP camp in northern Darfur and reports militias allied with the SAF are using civilians as human shields. We have urged the RSF to end its attacks, its attacks on displaced civilians in Zamzam, and urged the SAF to ensure civilians and humanitarian workers can move freely in and out of Zamzam. External support to the warring parties only serves to prolong the conflict.
On cooperation with the Special Envoy, Mr. Al-Mamra, since his first visit in January 2024 as a Special Envoy, the authorities have facilitated his meetings with the leadership in the political and civilian and diplomatic areas, and he has met leaders and civil society without interference, and we have facilitated a briefing for him on the dynamics of the conflict, and we have presented our readiness to reach a peaceful settlement respecting everyone, and we also emphasized the neutrality of the UN and centrality of the UN, and emphasizing the necessity of Sudanese ownership of the resolution. And the discussion with Mr. Lamabra included discussing the Sudanese roadmap and the Jeddah Declaration, and using the Jeddah Declaration as a basis. And also we discussed humanitarian access, and we have clarified that Sudan, before the war, has received 12 European envoys, and we requested officially from them to assist to integrate the RSF to the armed forces.